My dear people of Ambazonia, accept liberation greetings from me, Comrade John Akuro. Today is Wednesday, and today is the 9th of April 2025. I'm afraid we are not seated in our studio today because we are out on delocalization, but it is important for me to have to share this message here. It's true we may not have inserts today, we may not have a jingle, but there is one important thing we need to note. What we privilege more at times will be the message, because it's not all the time that we'll have all the niceties and all the aesthetics. My people of Ambazonia, I have said it lately and I want to repeat it now that we are at a serious turning point in our liberation movement. Although the visual will give the impression that things have gone so bad, so down, that the level of mobilization is at an all-time low, that, some people have drawn back and are just watching and waiting to see if the fundamentals change so they can come back to the fold, while those who from the point go had been totally opposed to our liberation movement, to our struggle, are today seeing it as the only route to salvation. My people of Ambazonia, I am convinced that a good lot of us are seeing today that the French, who seemed very elusive from the start of this liberation movement, are today on all fronts. I mean, on all fronts. This should be a precursor to our people, to the effect that the French now know that they stand a real chance to lose their grounds in Ambazonia. This should be a pointer to our people that we have made just a lot of strides to the point the French know that because they are also at their most vulnerable ebb today, there is a real chance that we egg out from their grip that freedom that our people started seeking since 1963. When I say since 1963, I know some people will be wondering, but is he not? But go back to the writings of great minds like Professor Bernard Nsokika Fondon. You will see that it had hardly been up to 2 years that our people found themselves, unfortunately, annexed by La République du Cameroun, some so-called union of two states equal in status, that our people could perceive clearly what had just happened. Our backs were pushed to the wall by a joint effort of the French and the British. After the United Nations, in a General Assembly on April 21, 1961, clearly held a vote and voted overwhelmingly in favor of the independence of the Southern Cameroons. My people of Ambazonia, we were traded like cattle and sheep. Over 60 years and counting after, the French and the British still hold the same thoughts and mentality about our people. If you must know, right now, they even think that we are worse. I mean, worse than we were in 1961. And the reason is simple. That is because in 1961, we had forebears who knew what it meant to stand up for their people, who knew what it meant to put the interest of the masses following them first, who knew what it meant to put country first. That is how, like one man, our elected representatives were able to leave the Nigerian parliament in Enugu and relocate all of them without exception. Not a single soul opposing to Boya, where they settled down in 1954 and founded the Southern Cameroons as we know it. When I say founded, that settled down and gave it the shape form, and soul that we knew it by 1961. My people of Ambazonia, when you look around today, you find people I freely can call their names today, morons, moving all over the place and calling themselves our elected representatives, although we all know we never elected them, moving all over the place and calling themselves our elite. Not a single one of them has been seen for the past 8 years that we have faced a genocide. For the past 8 years that our people are being massacred, that our people are being killed for sport, that our people are being looted, our mothers raped, our sisters, our daughters raped, our old and vulnerable people being roasted in their homes, our children being defiled, and our village communities being razed down to ashes. Not a single one of them is on record to have stood anywhere to say this is wrong. Not a single one of them is on record to have stood anywhere to say this has to stop. Not a single one of them has stood up in the so-called House of Assembly of La République du Cameroun, where they claim to represent us, to say this house has got to come to a standstill unless we discuss the bloodshed that this country, backed by France, is sponsoring in the Southern Cameroons, aka Ambazonia. Pathetic to see that it is 8 years later, 8 years down the road, that you find someone called O.C. Joshua Nambangi now saying he's making an appeal. He's appealing to the conscience. Appealing to the conscience of a genocidal regime like that of La République du Cameroun, that it is now time for them to entertain a conversation about the massacre ongoing in the Southern Cameroons in the Parliament of La République du Cameroun. 8 years down the line. And throughout all these years, O.C. Joshua has been seated in that house. My dear people of Ambazonia, for how long shall we continue to be fooled? For how long shall we continue to let this kind of people come in our communities and deceive our unsuspecting people? Listen, if you have never really shown real support to this liberation movement, I am letting you know this is an ideal moment to get into the fold. You are going to see an avalanche of conferences everywhere, here and there, because the French are on all fronts, I insist on all fronts, using all tactics in their playbooks to see how to foster the confusion in our midst, to see how to further fragment and divide us, and to see how to irk out of those of us who have refused to see and think critically resolutions that they are going to use against us. You have heard conflicting kinds of proposals coming in from here and there. Suddenly you hear they want to reinstitute the position of vice president in the constitution of La République du Cameroun. And of course, why do they want to reinstitute that position? Because they need to pick someone who will not change from the name Prime Minister, Head of Government to Vice President. It will be even much emptier. Much emptier than the position of Prime Minister, Head of Government, which is a figurehead position as we see it now. You recall what role Foncha played as Vice President? What role Estimuna played as Vice President? They had no voice. A Vice President only takes speech or only moves out to do the things he or she is assigned to do by the President. As long as the President is there, the Vice President doesn't have a voice. The Vice President is ceremonial. Vice President will only make sense if the President suddenly dies and that Vice President is allowed to take over. Listen, folks, this is something we have to bear in mind. The French never look for permanent solutions. Even in the colonies that are effectively theirs, they never look for permanent solutions. They look for things that calm the temperature temporarily. giving them the opportunity to see how to seal your fate for many more decades to come. They have only one project, only one project. Keep you and I subjugated and enslaved forever so that we'll continue to be their milking cow. I said in one of my broadcasts that the French are at their lowest ebb today because, as you can see, even on Twitter, now X, where people directly connected to the White House in the United States are making a mockery of the French president, and where French officials are directly, sometimes also indirectly, taking swipes at officials in the White House. The reason is simple. Because the French have discovered that they no longer have America's back in the nonsense that they have been doing on the African continent. It's not only today it started. It started under the regime of President Joe Biden, where the French expected America to rise to the occasion like it did with Libya, to give them the backing to destroy Libya as they did, to give them the backing to install a puppet like they did in Cote d'Ivoire, Alassane Draman Ouattara, to give them the backing that they received to continue to extort and steal from Mali, to continue to steal the natural resources of Niger. The Biden administration simply decided not to play the French game, stood by and watched the French being kicked out of Niger, watched the French being kicked out of Mali, watched the French being kicked out of Burkina Faso. Today, the French are also being kicked out of Senegal. Of course, the French are literally out of the Central African Republic. We have seen now the French have gone into their playbook and done everything they could to hold on to Gabon. That is the same thing that they are doing in La République du Cameroun. And they know that La République du Cameroun will be without real substance if they let the people of Ambazonia get their way. That is why, besides talking of reinstituting the position of vice president, because they have heard already a lot of criticism, they have seen citizens of La République du Cameroun come out to denigrate, to insult, to ridicule the current figurehead prime minister of La République du Cameroun, Joseph Dion Ngute. They have seen citizens of La République describe that position as the worst window dressing of all times. And we have all seen Ferdinand Gongo take delight in making Dion Ngute look like a little schoolboy. No, look like a houseboy. My dear people of Ambazonia, what other signs do we want to see? As a result of that, they have now started some subterranean talks, some subterranean proposals like, oh, let's see, it may make a lot of sense to the people of La République du Cameroun come to their senses and temporarily get a kind of truce by making a Southern Cameroonian, an Anglophone, as they call it, the next president, because of the current serious ethnic fight between the people of the north, the people of the central southeast, that's the Bulu Ekambeti and the Bamileke people. And they say perhaps the best compromise would be to make one of the slaves a president temporarily, so that it gives them time to resolve their internal fights, keep us at bay, blindfold us to think that we are in control of things, and then they come back full force to continue to get what they want. Let me be clear. This had come up before. I told our people that in 2011, I was a communications consultant and advisor to the late barrister Bernard Achomuna. The French promised him too in the lead up to the 2011 presidential election that they were going to foster his candidature. They were going to throw their weight behind him. They caused the late barrister Bernard Mouna to go to Senegal, where he had meetings with the Senegalese president, through whom they promised they were going to churn out billions of CFA francs to support his candidacy. They caused him to visit Cote d'Ivoire, to visit Congo. They caused him to meet those heads of state with the promise of backing his candidature. And they even created a consultancy in France that was going to handle his election campaign. And our late brother, Bernard Mouna, was made to come up with a budget of almost 100 billion for his campaign. With all those hopes festered in him, which were a Trojan horse, the late barrister Bernard Mouna went out to fall into a trap already set by the French, using Ile Kamga with something called at the time l'offre orange, called the orange offer. L'offre orange seemed like a people's initiative, a popular people-backed initiative to throw the weight of the masses behind one presidential candidate who will be, pushed to victory by the popular masses. And they drained and drained and drained from the late barrister Bernard Mouna. He invested his own resources and even went beyond in the pious hope that money was going to come in from France. At the end of the day, it was a war of words between the late barrister Bernard Mouna and Ile Kamga of the Offer Orange, because the Offer Orange suddenly came out and described our late venerated man of law as a joker who thought he could easily scam them and ride on the people's backs to get to wherever he wanted to get to without taking the appropriate measures. At a meeting where they were supposed to announce the late barrister Bernard Mouna as the candidate of the Offer Orange, he could see clearly the manipulations. He could see clearly that all the hopes he had built in them were going to result to naught, that the mountain had given birth to an anthill. History is simply about to repeat itself. History, I insist, is about to repeat itself. Shall we fall for this nonsense for a second time, at a time our people have resolved clearly that we must stand for what we believe in? Shall we fall yet another time to the stupid plans of people who only believe in power, who don't see beyond their personal ambitions, that they are being used to take us into another expensive, inexplicable, and unproductive ride? My dear people of Ambazonia, this is the time for us to focus and harness all our resources towards helping our people on the ground to keep the resistance alive. This is a time more than ever before where every single dollar needs to go to our people who need it so badly to stay resilient and resistant. This is a time more than ever before where we need to think critically and refuse to be swayed by glib talks, to be swayed by empty promises that do not hold the promise of success. Listen, folks, like I said, we're at a critical turn. Very critical term. The French are running around like a mad demon. The French are running around mad like a town crier who has lost his sails. They are everywhere. They are even in places you cannot suspect. While you and I, who are simply thinking that we are doing the right thing, who are simply thinking and believing to ourselves that we are fighting a good fight, and that quietly we will get there, are in a deep slumber. The French are on all fronts, using even those countries that we could not suspect they will use. Because they are telling those countries that with the current state of affairs in the world, that with the world order currently being redefined, that with the current shake-up in diplomatic and military relations across the world, they as a bloc stand to lose big if they, the French, lose their grip on Africa. Will we accept to be a collateral damage in all of this? This is rather a time for us to exploit the benefits of a current shake-up of the world order. Not a time for us to accept to become one of the collateral damages. My people of Ambazonia, the boulevard is wide open for us to take advantage, if only we will wear back our critical cap. I trust the people of the Southern Cameroons to open their eyes and ears wide, to wear back our critical thinking caps, and to understand that the stakes are now higher than they ever were at the beginning of this liberation movement. This is the time that we will either make or mar. We have held far too many conferences. We have held far too many meetings. We have gone to several capitals and to several places to hold conferences and come up with very beautiful resolutions, which resolutions are all in drawers, receiving layers upon layers of dust. These conferences have not taken us to anywhere. This is the time for us to act and to work critically. This is not a time for noise making. This is a time for us to also do silent diplomacy. This is also the time for us to synergize behind the scenes. This is also the time for us to solidify our bases. This is also the time for us to take advantage of the fundamentals of our liberation movement that remain very strong, unknown to a lot of people. The struggle is not losing grounds on ground zero. No, the struggle is rather being strengthened on ground zero. At first, we were looking at mass actions. Today, we are seeing strategic actions. At first, we're looking at some kind of, some kind of visual that will give us the impression that we are going. But today, there are very deliberate and strategic arrangements taking place. And deliberately, there will be no communication. In the past, we sold all our strategies to the enemy. In the past, we sold all the progress we were making to the enemy. And we gave them room to use their apparatchiks in our midst to disorganize us and destroy those plans before they got to fruition. Today, more than ever before, we will also work on the element of surprise. And that is how we will make it. I want to thank each and every one of you that has taken time to watch this short, unpointed broadcast. Share it as widely as you can. Encourage anyone around you to make sure they are coming back to the fold to support this liberation movement. We need all that support now. We need all those efforts now. We need every brain available to come on board now. But by all means, we don't need conferences at this point. What we need at this point, let's talk to each other behind the scenes. Let's call. Let's meet in little strategic meetings among ourselves. And let us put the past challenges behind us and focus on a future that will be guided by more action and less talk. To God be the glory. Thank you.